A warm good evening to everyone and a heartfelt welcome to today's discussion organized by Talking Films Online, also known as TFO. My name is Tanmay and I am your host for today's session. TFO began its journey with Professor Nikhila and Dr. Gita Vishwanath in June 2020 during the lockdown. Over the years, TFO has metamorphosed from a spontaneous idea into an expanding community of cinephiles encompassing scholars, researchers, students, professors, filmmakers, and anyone passionate about cinema. We are delighted to have sustained this forum thanks to you, our dedicated participants, who gather every Saturday at 9 p.m. as per Indian Standard Time on Zoom to talk about cinema. It has been TFO's practice to invite individuals to select and lead discussions on chosen films, which participants are free to watch at their own time and place. TFO has the pleasure of hosting eminent filmmakers, professors, cinematographers, and editors like Aparna Sen, Amal Palekar, Girish Kasaravalli, and Adur Gopalakrishnan. Our journey has also included film festivals such as South Asian, East European, Iranian, Women's Cinema, among others. Every June, TFO hosts a smartphone short filmmaking contest for students and organizes a lecture series in university departments to commemorate its anniversary. In September 2024, we organized our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, in collaboration with FCT Baroda. Last year, we also organized our second international conference in hybrid mode titled Screen to Street Decoding Cinema in Everyday Life, in collaboration with Banwarilal Bhalotia College, Asansol, West Bengal. Now, for tonight's discussion, we'll focus on the Serbo-Croatian film Zaseda, directed by Živojin Pavlović. The film has been chosen by Dr. Hemant Kumar Golapalli, who will also lead the discussion today. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Golapalli, who currently holds the position of Assistant Professor at Vidyasagar University, Midnapur. He completed his doctoral research on the representation of modern scientific theories in the works of Robert Anton Wilson. He has published articles on existential angst in Byron, movement, and anger in Swinburne, and issues related to environmental science. Alongside his work on canonical literature, he has also written on humorous stereotyping in Guy Ritchie's films, the representation of free will in cinema, and has delivered lectures on adaptation studies. His research interests include chaos and complexity theories, Western philosophy, Swinburne studies, and film studies. We are truly honored to have him sir with us today, and we look forward to an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. Now I am handing over the mic to Dr. Golapalli. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction and thank you for inviting me. The list of illustrious speakers, I'm nowhere near them, but I'll try my best. Uh, anyway, uh, the first thing I should mention is that, when I was watching the film for the first time, it was extremely frustrating watch because I always felt that I had this nagging feeling that I'm missing out on something, maybe some link that I'm missing out on, some particular layer of meaning that I'm missing out on. So I don't know whether all of you felt this, those who have watched the movie. But I feel that there's something that was missing from my understanding. So the primary objective of this particular discussion or talk is to figure out that particular missing link and to maybe find another layer of meaning or add another layer of meaning to the film in discussion. Uh, so first, we should maybe begin with by talking about giving you a bit of background regarding the film, because as you might have known, the film belongs to what is considered as the black wave or the new film in Yugoslavian cinema. It's a period in Yugoslavian cinema. I don't want to get into too much of details regarding this, but there are certain things I would like to point out. One is uh, the term itself was used for the first time in 1969, the same year that the film in discussion was released. So it referred to mainly the negative representation of Yugoslavia. Uh, the author, Jovicic was the name of the author, who wrote about the Black Wave. The article's name is Black Wave in Our Films. And he mainly talked about the negative representation of Yugoslavia. And he talked about the films not being in sync with the cultural, ideological progress of Yugoslavia. So it was mainly, he talked about how the films of the 60s were not doing the party line. So, in a sense, they were not erasing sort of contradictions that existed in socialist Yugoslavia. Uh, yes. Uh, uh, okay. Uh, yeah. So, yeah. So he talks about he refers to the filmmakers as being anti-socialist. He also referred to Pavlovich as being a nihilist. Uh, but how did this particular black wave come into existence in the first place? That we should also think about that. I mean, when you think of socialist Russia, you think of Soviet Union, you think of socialist Yugoslavia, you think of a lot of political control. But that was not the case. That was not particularly the case with Yugoslavia at that point of time, because already in 1948, if you know a little bit of history, already in 1948, Tito's Yugoslavia had, uh, already separated from the Eastern Bloc in 1948. So there was a lot more uh, relaxation during that period. So it was more, uh, uh, the political power or the political control was sort of relaxed at that point of time. So there was a lot more decentralization of political power. There was economic reform at that point of time, because Tito's Yugoslavia was trying to place itself between the East and the West. It was trying to place itself between communism on one hand, Soviet communism, socialism, and on the other hand, capitalism. Right? So it was somewhere in between. And you get glimpses of this in the film itself. It is there in the film. If you refer to, for example, the first few scenes, right after the first scene, you find the second scene where it talks about campaigning in Zagreb. Zagreb is a village in Yugoslavia, Serbia. So it talks about campaigning for the first elections, which are the controlled elections, took place in 1945. And it talks about campaigning for that particular elections. But during that particular scene, you will also notice that the supplies that the comrades were taking to Zagreb were actually supplied by the Allies. So you have Britain, America, for instance, right, considered as capitalist nations. On the other hand, you have Soviet Russia. So in a sense, the party officials were trying to bribe the peasants in Zagreb, to vote for the Communist Party in the first controlled elections in 1945. So you do find a representation of that, that kind of politics that was going on at that point of time. So there was a lot more decentralization of political power during that period of time, economic reform at the same time, and there was increased democratization of the social sphere during that period of time. So there wasn't a lot of control over what films could do, or the function of art during that period of time. So so you find, for example, the Pavlovich, Petrovich, all criticizing socialist Yugoslavia at that point of time. But there is a sort of ambiguity that is inbuilt into the film, if you notice. Right? There's a sort of ambiguity that you'll find in the film and during that particular period. The ambiguity is that they're not criticizing socialist ideology as such, or the principles or the ideals of socialism as such, they are mainly critical of a sort of propaganda of the socialist state. They are criticizing the uh, you know ideological dogmatism of that particular period. So they're not critical of the ideology of socialism per se. They are more critical of the ideology of the state, right? So in that sense, Pavlovich in his articles has actually referred to this kind of a ideological dogmatism. He has referred to a sort of mythologization, taking over documentation, in his own words. So he is talking about how the art is no longer about the revolution. Instead of documenting the revolution, they are producing according to him revolutionary kitsch or trash, right? So he does refer to this particular thing. So in his films, this kind of ambiguity is built into his films. If you refer to uh, certain scenes, for instance, you will find that the movie as a whole, in fact, you will find that uh, on one hand you have socialist ideology, which in itself is not bad, right? But then you have this individual ideology that is overtaking. There are individual agendas that are overtaking the socialist principles in the film, right? So you have certain characters, for instance, Yotik in the film, right? He can be considered, in fact, as the main villain of the film. So you have Yotik on one hand. On the exact opposite extreme, you have Eva, who is the main protagonist of the film, right? So you have two opposite ends that are already established in the film, right? On one hand, you have Yotik, who is only trying to fulfill his individual private agenda, and on the other hand, you have uh, Eva, who uh, believes in socialist ideology, principles of socialism. He believes that socialist state is meant for the welfare of all people, right? In one scene, for example, he talks about how the socialist state is supposed to protect everyone, right? But what you find here is, uh, Utic, for instance, constantly executing people on trumped up charges, right? You always find him executing people. For instance, the campaigning scene that I talked about. In the campaigning scene, in the background of the campaigning scene, where there are loud music, even wedding music being played, you'll find that in the background you have Yotik executing two people on trumped up charges. He tells them that you have stolen war supplies meant for the soldiers, and he shoots them, both of them, right? And in another scene, you'll also find him in a graveyard scene where he is seen executing two people, two to three people in the background, right? Probably Chetnik rebels or sympathizers of the Chetnik rebels. So there are several interest groups that you find in the film, uh, right? So Yotik and Eve on two opposite ends, and in between you have Zika, for instance. Zika is not exactly portrayed as a bad guy, but Zika does not believe in the socialist ideology as such, right? He doesn't believe in it. He is uh, probably a representation of the Yugoslav people, right? The Slavic people who are only there to fight for people like Yotik, who are only there to fight for the state, right? The people who will get sacrificed, right? Zika, for instance, is finally sacrificed for Yotik, right? He dies in the ambush. The title refers to that particular ambush towards the end of the film, right? Anyway, so this is one point that is very important, which is that the film is ambiguous in its attack of socialism. It does not attack socialist principles. It attacks the socialist state, which is filled with corrupt people with their own private agendas. Not only Yotik and Zika, there's also the leader of the youth wing of the Communist Party, the partisans, right? The youth wing is also the leader of the youth wing also has private agendas, personal agendas that he is trying to fulfill. This is one. There's another thing that is very important is Pavlovich's obsession with what he calls the poetics of viciousness or the aesthetics of the disgusting, right? This is something that is again inbuilt into the film. For example, what he calls the raw images or drastic images. Now he's not referring to uh, the stylistics of filmmaking as such, right? When he talks about drastic images or raw images, he is not referring to, or aesthetics of the disgusting, he is not referring to the stylistics of the film. He is referring, in fact, to the force of the irrational within the film, right? He's talking about the force of the irrational as opposed to a particular way in which it is shot. So I'm not going to get too much into the stylistics of filmmaking as such because I'm not an expert in that. But I feel what he's trying to show in the film are again two oppositions that he's trying to show in the film. One is this natural propensity for violence, right? Human propensity towards violence. This is one extreme, and on the other extreme you have consciousness, right? Consciousness that talks about tolerable living for everyone on one hand. On the other hand, you have this natural propensity for violence. These are the two extremes again that you'll find in the film, right? And this irrational is what he talks about when he refers to something called drastic images or raw image, right? He's talking about irrational actions being a part of the content, even though you could in fact talk about the stylistics of the film. For example, his movement from montage to mise en scène uh, in the film. His early films were uh, uh, utilizing montage theory. On the other hand, his later films, When I'm Dead and Gone, for instance, which was released in 1967, and 1969 Ambush, both of these films have a different kind of aesthetics, right? So there's a depth of field that you'll find in the film, which is missing from his earlier films, right? So he was influenced by Eisenstein on one hand, montage theory, Eisenstein. On the other hand, he was influenced by the neorealist, Italian neorealism. So you find a lot of depth of field. You find long shots establishing long shots. So you find that in the film. But I feel when he talks about the drastic images, he is in fact referring to this particular opposition between the natural propensity towards violence as opposed to consciousness, which leads to tolerable living for everyone. So what you find is that this consciousness actually fails in the film. Towards the end of the film, when you see uh, the protagonist dying towards the end of the film, end of the film, you find that consciousness, in fact, fails in that particular in the film. So there is that force of the irrational that you find throughout the film, in fact, right? For example, the court scene, the towards the beginning of the film. In the court scene, you find the judgment scene where uh, Micha's father, Micha is the heroine love interest of the protagonist. So you find, for instance, her father being judged and sentenced to imprisonment, his home being taken over and ransacked. So that particular scene, for instance, the prisoner is not allowed to speak. He is not given any right to speak, right? While Eve in the previous scene, while talking to Micha, he talks about how if he is innocent, he will he will not die. He will not go to prison if he is innocent, right? But these principles are not actually practiced. right? Because there are again individual agendas that are taking over. So you have the court scene, you have very important the ransacking scene after that, uh, which I feel is a very complex scene. So you find a lot of action taking place in that particular scene. The ransacking scene, where after the judgment, the youth wing come and ransack the house, and Eve slowly leaving, not participating in the ransacking, but slowly leaving the scene. And then there are some girls, students who are uh, dancing, practicing for a parade, right? So there are three events sort of taking place in that one particular scene, that I find is, uh, very interesting, right? Uh, Also because the scene after that, when Eve leaves and goes home, the scene after that, it actually establishes the setting of the film, right? This is also very important because you're talking about a landscape of violence, right, in the film. So when you talk about the landscape of violence, when you talk about the raw images, you talk about the irrational, you are uh, directly or indirectly being led towards the setting of the film. So the setting of the film, uh, refers to, the world war that is still ongoing during that point in time. So you find 20 minutes in the film, you find wounded soldiers being carried to uh, the house of Micha, the heroine, which has now become a makeshift hospital. So you find this kind of landscape of violence. You find again, the meaning of ambush itself leads to this sense of violence, this natural propensity to violence that Pavlovich talks about. So you have, for instance, uh, ambush. There are lots of scenes of ambush that you'll find in the film. For instance, you'll find uh, at the very beginning, after they are coming back from campaigning, of which Eve was also a part of the campaigning. When they're coming back from the campaigning, you find the supply cart being ambushed by the Chetnik rebels. So you have a lot of interest groups that you find in the film. You have the partisans, which is the Communist Party. Uh, you have the partisans, the communists. You have the Chetnik rebels who are royalist, and then you have the bourgeoisie, the previously bourgeois people, and then you have the peasants who are not aligned to any group, right? So you have these four particular interest groups that you find in the film, right? Anyway, ambush refers to, uh, it can refer to the ambush of the supply cart, but more importantly, it refers to the final ambush of the Chetnik rebels towards the end of the film, right? The entire end of the film shows you depicts the ambush of the Chetnik rebels. Uh, so it has, uh, in a sense, multiple scenes refer to ambush, but mainly, if you refer to Daniel Golding actually talks about how in the film Ambush, it is the revolution itself that is getting ambushed, right? So it's not the physical scenes of ambush that are important. It is, in fact, the revolution itself that is being ambushed by, again, personal interests, right? Personal interests of individuals. So you have the multiple mythologizing of individuals as opposed to uh, the socialist ideals, right? uh, yes. So yes, so when you talk about the setting of the film, it is set during the war, and it is set somewhere near the Sirmian border, Sirmian front, where the Nazi soldiers were pushing the Red Army and the trying to push the Red Army and the Yugoslavian partisans, right? So it is set somewhere near that particular front. That is why you see wounded soldiers being carried to the hospital during that period of time. So what is important here, because the Red Army is fighting alongside the Yugoslavian partisans, what is important to note here is the overwhelming, pervasive influence of the USSR in Yugoslavia, right? Particularly uh, in the immediately after the period immediately after the World War. So you have, for example, 45 to 48, and then after the death of Stalin, for instance, a complete separation from any Soviet ideology at that point of time. But because it is set in 1945, you'll also have to take into consideration the overwhelming influence of the USSR, right? Not only in terms of the politics, because it is a known fact that during that particular period of time, 45 to, I'm talking of 45 to 48, 48 when Tito's Yugoslavia left the Eastern Bloc. So during that particular period of time, the Yugoslavians celebrated, in fact, the same events that were essential to the cultural memory of Russia, right, of Soviet Russia. So, for example, they would celebrate the birth of the birthday of Lenin, for instance, right? They would take interviews of Stalin and publish it. There was actually a newspaper called the Republic, very important newspaper called the Republic, which published these kinds of things. So they celebrated on almost the same holidays that the Russians did. So the influence of Soviet Union is widespread, not only in the political arena but also in the social sphere, because uh, it is again a known fact that it was Soviet Union that helped Yugoslavia develop its film, for instance, cinema, right? So they provided equipment during that particular period of time. They even produced films. Russian directors produced films, uh, in Yugoslavia during that period of time, right? There's a very important film that you could refer to if you get time. It's called Slavika, right? Slavika was released in 1953. Uh, Again, it talks about, it shows the the Yugoslavian partisans fighting the Italian army, right? So it's sort of the mythologization of the national imaginary. So Right. So the influence of Soviet Union was not limited to the political sphere. It also spread to cinema, but also at the same time it spread to art and literature, right? Because I belong to uh, literature background, so I should probably talk about this because if you consider, if you look at the film, you will find constant images of you are there's a constant barrage of images of Stalin and Tito constantly throughout the film, right? For example, the movie itself begins with the image of Stalin, right? So there's a video being played and there's a song in the background being played. So you find Stalin, the Stalin at the beginning. Then you have several images of Stalin and Tito throughout the film. There are posters of Stalin and Tito. There are pictures of Stalin and Tito on the walls. There's wild celebratory music being played whenever they are on the screen. Uh, in several places, I don't know whether you remember this, but there's a scene where Eve is teaching or practicing music with the women of the party, and you find again superimposed on the wall, you find the images of Tito and Stalin. In fact, there is one particular scene which is very interesting, where you see Micha being followed by the music professor, right? When he's following her and she goes onto the bridge, and you find again in the background, you find the images of Stalin and Tito being carried, right, on the road, right? So everywhere you find superimposed this image of Tito and Stalin. During the judgment scene, also you find, for instance, the slogans of Tito and Stalin, right? Uh, Emphasizing the symbolic and ideological presence of USSR during that period of time, Stalinism during that period of time, right? But for me, what is the missing link that I talked about is, in fact, the music that we do not understand, because mainly because there are no subtitles for the musical pieces that are being played in the film, right? If you're not a native speaker of any Slavic language, you will not understand most probably the songs that are being played, but they are actually very popular songs. And it is important to note that the songs are actually of Russian origin. All of the songs are Russian war songs, right? Most of the songs that you see being played are Russian war songs. In fact, the opening scene, which again, there are no subtitles, so you just see images of Stalin, you see images of development in Soviet Russia, right? You see Moscow. So those images that are being played, they are played to the tune of the Sacred War, right? This is very important, right? So it is played to uh, the Sacred War, which talks about, repulsing the oppressors. It talks about, killing the plunderers, the torturers of people, right? So this kind of a violent images, imagery is something that you find in those particular songs, right? So the Sacred War at the beginning of the film establishes the influence of USSR uh, on Yugoslavia, right? The beginning, the first scene, it establishes the tone of the film in a sense, right? So Sacred War, that is why, for instance, uh, certain people are considered as traitors and executed throughout the film, right? In the end, even Eve, the protagonist, is executed towards the end because of this, right? Anyway, so I feel that there is this layer of meaning that we have missed, mainly because we have not understood the musical pieces being played in the film. And I've been able to trace some of them, not all of them, right? For example, there's one song that plays called There Goes the Red Machine at the beginning, again, the campaigning scene where they're going on the truck and they are singing There Goes the Red Machine. I could not trace the song, but I imagine that it is probably again a Soviet song that they are singing on that particular supply truck. Uh, there are also certain other musical pieces that are being played that are sometimes played ironically, but you will also notice that sometimes the music, the scenes are edited to the rhythm of music in the films, right? In the film, for example, most of the scenes sometimes either begin with music or end with music, right? For example, you'll find in one scene, again, this is a song that I was not able to trace, but uh, there is a similar song that maybe it is that song. So there's a scene where Zika and Eve are uh, waiting for the sympathizers of Chetnik rebels to come, and there's a band orchestra playing behind them, and they are playing a song which I believe is Rosna Livada, from what I could figure out, uh, which talks about uh, you know uh, the lover waiting for you know a woman who is waiting for her lover who has been taken by tyrants, right? So there is an obvious nationalist sentiment that you'll find not only here but also in the Sacred War. There's obviously a nationalist statement, but also at the same time you'll find uh, the for example, the growing distance between Micha and uh, Eve, right, the protagonist, right? Because I feel that maybe the people tend to ignore this particular love track that is going on in the film, which I feel is very important, because in one particular scene, as I told you, the execution scene in the graveyard, you see Eve and Micha kissing, and in the background you have the executions taking place. So there's a specter of communism, specter of violence dominating even the love track. So that I feel is kind of important. And there's a growing distance between Micha and Ive that is highlighted by this particular song, right? Rosna Livada, which talks about uh, a woman's husband or lover being taken away by mainly Turkish pirates. So tyrants they are referred to as. Uh, so growing distance between Nietzsche and Ive is highlighted there. And then the ransacking scene that I referred to, the musical piece that is being played is a very popular Russian war song. It's called Katyusha, right? Katyusha is the name of the woman, again, who is sending a message to her lover who is fighting for the motherland, right? And the lines are, let him preserve the motherland as Katyusha preserves their love, right? Sort of the love being associated with nationalist sentiment. So the love between a man and a woman is, in fact, related to the nationalist sentiment, uh, you know, in this particular song, right? But, again, uh, it is ironic that you see uh, uh, Micha betraying Eve in the film, right, and sleeping with the music professor in the film. So it's kind of ironic also, right? Because on one hand, the music actually talks about how this girl is waiting for her lover to come back and preserving the love, and here you find Micha uh, not being faithful to Eve. In fact, I believe that when Eve slaps Micha in one scene, it is probably the direct result of the music, the songs that are being played in the film, right? The violent content of the songs that are being played in the film, right? Because uh, even the Sacred War, or uh, there's another very popular song uh, called over the hills, over the mountains and hills of forests of uh, Yugoslavia, right? This is a very popular song that is being played during the school dance, right? It's very important because in that particular song, again, it refers to uh, killing the traitors, right? Murdering the traitors. So this is something that you find in that particular song as well, right? So again, that song is not a Russian song, but it is a derivation of a Russian song, right? So it is a derivation of a Russian song that has that became almost the anthem of the Yugoslavian partisans during that period of time, right? So Po Sumama Igorama is the song that they are playing, as opposed to the bourgeois music being played earlier in that particular scene, right? So the youth leader goes and tells them to stop playing this music and play something else, even though there are subtitles for that, the title of the song, that's not exactly the song that they are singing, right? So I could not find anything uh, of by that title, but it is actually another song that they are singing, which is this Posumama I Gorama, right? uh, over the mountains and forests of Yugoslavia. This is the song that they are playing, right? So Katyusha, Posumama I Gorama, right? Sacred War, Rosna Livada, and then you have in one scene where Zika tells the orchestra to, you know, now you're going to hear actual music, actual song, right? How a song is supposed to be staged and performed. So he plays, in fact, a song uh, which is called Invincible and Legendary. Invincible and Legendary, right? Which again has a it is also called the Song of the Russian Army, right? Which has again a nationalist sentiment. It talks about, uh, it talks about encouraging the soldiers who are fighting for the motherland, right? It talks about that. So I feel that this, all of these, in fact, and also there are certain pieces of literature that are mentioned uh, in the film that is also quite important. There's one novel by Ostrovsky which is being read by Eve, which is called How the Steel Was Tempered, right? Or The Making of the Hero. It is also called The Making of a Hero, right? So that piece of literature is also quite important to an understanding of how the hero is made, right? It talks about the positive influence of socialism on the hero, right? How it gives a purpose to the hero, but again, ironically used in the film, right? Uh, yes. So I'm going to end the talk here. It's been almost 40 minutes. Uh, so I think maybe I was able to add something to an understanding of this particular film. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful and informative discussion. Now the dice is open for everyone, and I will request others to please come up with your comments and questions if you have any.
Just to begin the discussion, Hemant, thank you very much. I mean, this is, at least for me, completely unknown territory. So I just watched this film knowing little about, the background. Neither do I know much about the movement in which it is set, nor the historical background. But clearly, there are many very interesting aspects to the film. One is what seemed to me, I mean, I don't know if this kind of a sense is what everyone got, but a sense that there is already a certain kind of cynicism about an ongoing revolution. So the way they refer to it is with, it's somewhat mixed. So as you said, there is a critique, and so films are allowed to critique. So probably it's coming from that. Also, like I was not sure, how to read this criticism. Is it about the ideology? While you said it wasn't, so when I was watching, I was not sure what to make of it. So is it a critique of the ideology, that seem to promise so much? There is a Kannada poem by Chandrasekhar Kambar about Mao. So the kind of promises that Mao makes, for China, and then what happened. So it's more or less like that I read the film. The sheer, I mean, whatever the ideals, the way these ideals are in some ways enacted and realized by men, who are, fragile, and whatever their, ideals are, they don't seem to care too much because they are responding, to exercise of power or whatever. So the larger ideals, the critique may be coming from the way in which these get enacted by power hungry people. So I was thinking of that. Also, something somewhat puzzling to me was, this character of Micha herself in the film. On the one hand, her father, the house is ransacked, and he's clearly part of the enemy. So is the film kind of there is no way in which Micha is distancing herself from her father, or I mean, I didn't get any sense of that. So is it about the fuzziness of boundaries? Because Micha does not get targeted. And the way in which Eva and Micha carry on their love, as if ideologies don't seem to matter. So it was a little puzzling. So maybe, as you said, there was a lot I was missing, partly because of the language, absence of, any sense of the language. Partly because I'm not at all familiar with the milieu. It was in a somewhat muddled and kind of fuzzy way that I made sense of the film. But I should say this. On TFO, we have had so many different kinds of films discussed. But this has been really so different and so scholarly, of a place and of a milieu where I don't know, there aren't too many scholars, I suppose, Hemant, who would talk as knowledgeably as you have done about this film. So thank you very much for suggesting this film, and for your very insightful and very informative background that you gave us to the film. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, it's easier to confuse the ideology with the state implementation of the ideology. So, I mean, that sort of contradiction is probably highlighted by not only Pavlovich but also Petrovich. And you may want to refer to some of his other movies as well. There's a movie called When I'm Dead and Gone in 1967. You can refer to. I think it'll give you a better idea because it was set in the current time. So, I mean, it was set in the 60s. So I think you'll be able to make better like sense of the political situation at that point of time. And regarding Micha, I think it has to do with something to do with the politics of freedom. So she talks about, we are free because socialism has come. We have become free when he slaps her, before he slaps her. So she is free to be with anyone she wants. So that's sort of a critique of uh, complicated critique of freedom is somehow going on in the background. If you see, like at the very beginning, also there's a scene where the professor is reading out some poems, and this person comes into the opens the door and says, "We are free." So that sort of critique of freedom is also going on in this particular scene. Uh, I think, and regarding the situation of Mija, I think that she has no choice as such. In one scene, actually, she tells Eve that she has to live with the gypsies, right? Gypsies have a major role to play in some other films produced during that period of time, but you'll also find gypsies in When I'm Dead and Gone. So that may, help you understand the filmmaker better. And in fact, you're talking about the criticism. So I talked about the relaxed kind of control that they had during that period of time. But after 1969, with the publication of this particular article, Black Wave, the criticism intensified in the 70s. So Pavlovich, for instance, was the main target. So he had to leave Serbia and go to Slovenia. So rest of the films after 69, he made rest of the films. I think he made 4 films after this, and all of them he made in Slovenia. So he had to leave in the 70s. So it sort of intensified. And this functionality of art is something that came into the forefront during that period of time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. May I ask others to please come up with your question or comment if you have any?
Yeah, can I speak?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction, Hemant. I had watched this movie quite a long time ago in a film club in Bangalore, which is, I think, run by M.K. Raghavendra. But I mean, it's very interesting to sort of think of this film with the other films of that era, even in the post-Stalin era, like the Andre Munch's film, The Man on the Tracks. I remember, and then of course Balbanow's films uh, about Stalinistic era, and I think one is about One Night. I forgot one. I forgot the title, Russian title, but yeah, some of the films, and 20 Days Without War is another film I remember. So these films together, I think, are great. I mean, are a great reflection of that era, political and social era, and sort of the humanistic approach to analyzing that era through art. I feel. I also find resonance between. I mean, I see this film as a disillusionment story through the trajectory of the young man, right? So that's which is very which is a sort of a resonance we find in something like Mrinal Sen's Padatik too, and also Mukhamukham from Adur in South. Incidentally, all of them deal with the Communist Party in some way or the other. But as you said, you made an important distinction, which I hadn't thought of so much about party versus the ideology itself. And I think that is very interesting to think of it differently because we tend to deride socialism and communism,
Yeah. I think
although it's happened
collective
through the wrong
ownership,
hands. Yeah, yeah,
collective ownership is, I mean, ideally, it's not bad in itself,
yes,
but the
yes,
way
yes.
it is
On
implemented.
paper, it's not bad. Let's say that.
In fact, there's
Yeah,
a character in When I'm Dead and Gone. It is the other film of
yeah,
Pavlovich, where there's a
yeah.
character who is sort of managing a factory, and the workers are trying to start a revolution against him. So he says, "Who are you rebelling against? You're rebelling against yourself, because this is the country of workers. So how can you rebel
Yeah.
against yourself?" So that sort of a thing is there.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, I think recently I watched on Amazon Prime, that's a film called Mr. Jones. I don't know if you have watched. It's
No,
about
no,
this British journalist who goes to Russia in 1930s and
no.
travels to Ukraine and finds that there is famine and wants to break that story, but nobody is allowing him to break that story because the Stalinist control is so rigid. And all of the grains in that film were being sent to the front, as this film also sort of alludes to, and which led to famine across a lot of these extended USSR countries, so to say, not so much in Moscow and around, but this far off new acquisitions, let's say, of USSR, like Serbia and Ukraine, etc., which is a little bit, I always say many Indian leftists will not agree with, but there is a, sort of it has a resonance about this impact of Russia has less been written about. So until actually you watch a lot of these films of that era which came, I think that side of the history is sort of buried a little bit. So it's very interesting to see such films. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. I mean, it's true actually, because uh, during that period, it's a very complicated period of time in the 45 post-war period. Since Stalinism did not have any kind of influence after 48, and after the death of Stalin in 53, there was absolutely no influence, and they were sort of in between. They were catering to the West and also Soviet Russia at the same time. So, for example, there again, if you refer to the music in When I'm Dead and Gone, it is more allied with the West. There are certain folk elements, folk music that you'll find, archival music, folk archive music, but at the same time, you'll find this rock and metal coming too. Serbia. So that's also, I think, quite important. How it disassociated itself from Stalinism, because it was trying to portray itself as a progressive alternative to Stalinism in that sense during that period of time. So that, I think, we should take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
Yes, and I also like the idea of how because this was a very prevalent feeling at that time that this is at least better than what is there, and we see that in the initial part of this film where that when the young man is said, "Why are you not?" I think his aunt or someone says, "Why are you not in college? Why are you wandering with a hat on?" All that kind of dialogue, and also
Yeah.
his girlfriend, his girlfriend's father is kicked out, etc. But he's still sort of believing that this is for a good cause. This feeling of that this is for a good cause. I mean, I guess any ideology, whether
Yeah.
it's Hindutva or communism, when you go to this extreme of closing your eyes to what is happening around you, and that I think many of these films bring out quite well with through of course always somehow through a young man's. Seems like the young men are the problem here who get blinded by the ideology, because I've not seen a women lead ever in
Mm.
such films who is blinded by the ideology, so to say. So yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I ask other participants to please come up with your question or comment if you have any? Sanjay sir, if you have any question or comment for the discussion. Tarkesh sir, do you have any question or comment? Sridhar sir, do you have any question or comment to make? Is there anyone who wants to add anything to this ongoing discussion? Any new take or any new comment?
I just want to ask one question, if nobody wants to speak. Is it because I remember that it was not banned at all, this film, and that's really surprising. So I just wanted to know, but it was also not screened so much. So I don't know what is the exact tension about this film, but I know that it was not banned by the Communist Party, so to say. So if you have any information about that, please.
Yeah, it was not banned, but it was taken out of distribution. So, I mean, that's why it was not screened. I mean, it was not banned, as
Okay.
I again, decentralization of state control in the social sphere, democratization of social sphere. So there wasn't that kind of a control that you found in Stalinist Russia at that point of time. I mean, yeah, maybe because of that. I'm just guessing. So it was
Okay.
not
Yeah.
distributed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
But as you know, Plastic Jesus, the film was banned, and also the filmmaker had to go to prison. So there are those.
Yes. Yes. Of course. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because he wasn't, but you said he went into exile or something to
Yeah,
Slovenia. So I was wondering what happened.
yeah. They considered him as, like a nihilist filmmaker who is showing the black reality of socialist Yugoslavia. So that sort of was the reason, and he was the main target of the criticism. Even in, if you read the Black Wave, the main article, he is the, you know person that director, the author, mainly criticizes.
thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. Uh, is there anyone else who want to ask anything before we close today? Or add anything? Tarkesh sir, do you want to say anything?
I don't have any questions as such, but it's a loud thinking. Uh, See, any drastic changes happen in the polity. One is it happens through a popular uprising. Another is there's no popular uprising, but you bring it through either external intervention or through armed revolution. So when there is an armed revolution and the change is brought in, and if there is no popular uprising, then there will be a mismatch between the vast majority and the people who are in control of the power. The tension between the two is quite visible in this narrative too. So how do we understand this tension? And it's an ironic tragedy in the sense that one of the votaries of the change becomes the victim of the change at the end. So the narrative is focusing on a person who is a votary of the change uh, getting eliminated at the end. And in the beginning, his girlfriend, who is taunted as being a bourgeois by the other friends, other comrades, uh, is quite happy. Uh, so that is one way of looking at it. So the popular uprising and the change in the polity, and then the uh, certain kind of either external intervention or the armed intervention, which brings in the polity change and the tension between the large population and the those who are in power of the polity. The second is about that looks like the thematic. If you look at the plot, that's how it unravels. But the second, I don't know, it is intentional or unintentional. The agency of the woman, uh, that looks quite interesting to me. Others have also pointed out uh, the way she seamlessly shift to the circumstances for her own survival. And there is also another woman comrade uh, who also exercises her agency. So, in that sense, they're very strong women characters with a survival instinct. Uh, uh, does that teach us any kind of lesson? Is something that I was trying to understand. Uh, so, thank you for the suggestion and also for the discussion.
Thank you for the question. I mean, uh, regarding the first question that you asked, I mean, it is not very clear even to, but as you said, it is part of the narrative. I mean, you do find certain as I told you about the interest groups that are present in the film. There are certain uh, contradictions that you find there in the you know post-war society. So I mean, it is there. I mean, it is part of the film, but I don't know if I'll be able to comment or add anything new to this. So I mean, not particular, nothing new to add to this. I mean, as you said, it is there in the film. I mean, you have the peasants who are non-aligned, and in one scene, for example, the youth wing steals from them the people who they were supposed to protect. And then you have the Chetnik rebels who are ambushing and being ambushed at the same time. So that sort of tension is there in the film. I don't know how to theorize it in any other way than what like you have already summarized it brilliantly. So I don't think I'll be able to add anything to that. Regarding the women character, yes, I've missed out on the other woman comrade. Uh, if you actually see, there's one scene where he, Eve plays a musical piece for her, something called "My Handsome." This is a piece. Even I could not trace the music, uh, but it seems to be a romantic song that was quite popular. Again, showing a sort of a contradiction in the character, probably. So there are lots of contradictions in her character as well. On one hand, she is the official. She has this official image to maintain, but in that particular scene, you see her closing the windows and asking the women to close the windows. In that particular, she relaxes and asks him to play this romantic piece. So there is another side to her that uh, that is very interesting. Again, I don't know how to theorize uh, the sort of women in the film, but as I said earlier, maybe it has something to do with uh, the sense of freedom that is provided by socialist Yugoslavia. So maybe something related to that. I mean, and also the misuse of power that you find constantly in the film. So maybe it has to do something with that as well. Uh, yeah, nothing much I can add to that.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any more comment or question? Uh, if there is no comment or any question, I just want to add one more thing. Hemant sir, thank you for first of all for your wonderful discussion. You have already mentioned that actually I don't have any question regarding that, but I don't have enough socio-political or knowledge about that time to talk about the socio-political background of the film. But while watching the film, the things I've noticed is I remembered of the Soviet masters like Eisenstein or Vertov, Ziga Vertov. I mean, films like Battleship Potemkin or Man with a Movie Camera or so films like that. You talked about that montage sequences or Italian neorealism. Basically, the entire film, this Zaseda was shot during in the daylight. There is no night scene because of course you need the natural light to shoot the film. You cannot have artificial set. You cannot have, I mean, proper professional actors. So the actors are, if you look at them, they are not all of them are not professional. Their actings are not so-called typically filmfare winning acting. Yeah. So these things I like very much. I mean, stylistically, I can
Yeah,
speak.
I
Yeah.
mean, he was influenced by the neorealists, so obviously the use of people who are not actors was quite common during that in that particular movement. Uh, but stylistically, when you talk of Eisenstein, I mean, I remember reading something that Pavlovich wrote when he talked about Battleship Potemkin, when he talked about the Odessa steps scene. He talked about how when he first watched it and came out of the theater, he was actually uh, quite affected by that particular film. But he could not understand at that point of time why he was affected. He was obviously not affected. Later on, he understood he was obviously not affected by the stylistic choices, the montage that Eisenstein has set up. That's not the point. According to him, which is something that he talks about, the wishes and the irrationality of people and the party people. So this is something that you find in highlighted in Potemkin, Battleship Potemkin as well, right? So people being killed and the child in that pram on the steps. So this kind of an irrationality of again, because someone else has referred to revolution, Tarkeshwar sir has referred to revolution. This kind of a irrationality of that is also a part of whether you're talking about armed revolution or any kind of revolution, right? This kind of irrationality is a part of it, right? So when you talk about the judgment scene, for instance, there are people shouting Tito's like there are people shouting that you kill him, uh, like kill that perpetrator, traitor, right? So these kinds of down with the kulaks and uh, bourgeoisie. So these kinds of slogans are being made, right? So this kind of an irrationality is something that he was highlighting, which was influenced by Eisenstein only without montage. If you see earlier films of before 1967, if you see his earlier films, he had made already 3 to 4 films before that. So if you see his earlier film, in the first film, I keep forgetting the name of the film. If you see those films, they are cut in that kind of a montage kind of style. But this one had more kind of uh, sort of long scenes where there's static camera following the characters at the scene, right? So setting up the scene, elaborate setting of the scene. This is something that you find in the film, right? So that is why I said, I mean, it's not the way you shoot it. I mean, again, there are differences of opinion regarding this, but according to Pavlovich, it's not. It doesn't matter how you shoot it. It matters, what the content is and the how the raw image is presented.
Yes, and apart from the Soviet masters, I can mention one more film that came before it came out in 1969, right? So there was this American master, Orson Welles, and his film Citizen Kane. So there is this wonderful montage there also, that dining table sequence, and the dining table is getting longer, and their relationship is also getting, I mean, they are also growing apart from each other. So this
Mhm.
American thing is also there. And also, of course, he's also got influence from Eisenstein. So Soviet
Yeah.
masters are influencing everyone at that time.
They are there.
Yes.
Okay.
Th Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
yeah, if we do not have any, if we don't have any more question or comment, I think we can wrap up for today. Do we have any more question or comment from anyone? I think we don't have. So, sir, I will just offer a brief vote of thanks before we say goodbye. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today's session. Now, on the verge of closing today's discussion, I want to convey my warm regards and deep appreciation to everyone present here. On behalf of TFO, I want to thank Hemant sir for making today's evening so enriching and deeply rooted in our love for cinema and in our love for these old masters. And I also thank my co-interns for their relentless efforts and in making this community active and running. Finally, last but not least, I want to thank Nikhila ma'am and Gita ma'am for making this community possible. Now, this is the time to say goodbye until we meet again. Thank you and good night.